Okay, so picture this.
Hmm.
You've had a long week. Maybe you're stressed about a decision, or maybe you just, lit a candle to set a vibe.
One of the fancy ones.
Exactly, one of those expensive midnight rain ones. You let it burn all the way down. The flame goes out, smoke clears, and you're left with this weird, chaotic, melted puddle of wax at the bottom.
It looks like a topographic map of a mistake.
It totally does. It's a mess. But then you catch yourself staring at it, and you tilt your head and you think, is that a bird? Wait, is that a letter J? And suddenly you're wondering, is there a message in this mess?
It's a question humans have been asking for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
I mean, we are biologically wired to find the signal in the noise.
And that is what we are diving into today. We are talking about ceromancy, which sounds like a medical procedure, but is actually the ancient art of wax reading.
It is, and it's so fascinating because it sits right at this intersection of ritual, psychology, and, well, just plain old physics.
We're basing this deep dive on a guide called Ceromancy, a beginner's guide to reading candle wax. And what jumped out at me immediately is how accessible it is. If I want to get into astrology, I need birth times, rising signs, retrogrades. It's a lot of math.
Oh, yeah.
Tarot has 78 cards to memorize. But this
is a candle and a match.
Right. But the guide claims it's one of the most intuitive forms of spiritual practicing out there. So our mission today is to figure out if that's true. We're going to unpack how this actually works, what we're supposed to be looking for, shapes, textures, the way it flows.
And the really tricky part.
Yeah, how to tell the difference between a spiritual message and a drafty window.
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Because at its core, ceromancy isn't about memorizing a rule book. It's a projection exercise. It's about connecting patterns, your own intention, and your subconscious mind.
So let's start with the basics then. What is actually happening here? Is the idea that the wax is somehow magically arranging itself?
Well, the definition of ceromancy is the art of interpreting the shapes, the movement, and the residue of melted wax. The belief, according to the material, is that the wax acts as a medium. It's catching the energy.
Catching the energy of what, though?
Of the intention. If you're doing a working, which is just a term for a spell or a focused intention, or asking a specific question, the wax reflects the environment of that question. It shows the flow of energy, potential obstacles, or maybe the outcome.
Okay, but you said intention. I have to clarify this because I burn candles constantly. If I look at the bottom of my Sunday brunch candle that I lit just because I wanted my house to smell like waffles, am I going to find my destiny in there?
Probably not. And I think that's a relief.
A huge relief.
There's a crucial nuance here regarding what we call casual burns. If you light a candle just for ambiance or for the scent, the wax generally doesn't hold any significant meaning.
Okay.
Unless you consciously choose to interpret it.
So I have to sort of turn the switch on.
Precisely. Intention is the container. If you don't set the container, the liquid just spills everywhere. The guide suggests this is most effective after specific scenarios. A ritual, a prayer, a petition, or
shadow work. I see that term shadow work thrown around a lot on TikTok. For anyone who doesn't know, can we define that? Because it sounds pretty spooky.
It sounds darker than it is.
Yeah.
Shadow work is essentially the psychological practice of exploring the repressed or hidden parts of your psyche, things you don't really want to look at. So if you're lighting a candle to help you process some old trauma or anger, reading the wax afterward can be a way to see what came up.
It's like taking a snapshot of your subconscious.
That's a great way to put it. And this is where it differs wildly from tarot. If you and I both pull the Three of Swords from a tarot deck, we can look it up. There's a general consensus: heartbreak, sorrow, separation. There's a dictionary.
Right.
In ceromancy, there is no dictionary.
Which feels frustrating. I mean, if I see blob, I want to know what the blob means. I don't want to guess.
But that's the point.
Yeah.
It forces you to rely on your internal library. The guide highlights that while there are some traditional symbols, your personal intuition and your emotional response are way more important than any list you find on the internet.
So it's the Rorschach test of the spiritual world.
Exactly. It's the pareidolia, that psychological phenomenon where your brain sees a face in the electrical outlet or a bunny in the clouds.
Yeah.
In ceromancy, we aren't dismissing that as a trick of the mind. We're leaning into it. We're saying, okay, why did your brain see a bunny and not a duck? That choice tells you something.
Okay, I'm with you. So let's say I'm ready to try this. I've got my question. I'm feeling intuitive. How do I not mess this up?
Well, step one is preparation. And I don't just mean buying the candle. You need to choose a candle that aligns with your purpose. Color matters here. Green for money, pink for love, white for clarity.
The standard color magic stuff.
Right. But then you have to ground yourself. You can't come to the candle frantic. You need to breathe, center your energy, and set that clear intention we talked about. And then, and this is the part people struggle with, you have to be hands-off.
Don't poke the fire.
Do not poke the fire. Don't swirl the wax around to make it look cool. You have to let the process unfold naturally. The physics of the burn is part of the reading.
Okay, so fast forward. The candle is done. It's safe to touch. We are looking at the aftermath. The source breaks this down into 4 elements of decoding. Let's tackle the first one, which is what everyone wants to know about. Shapes and symbols.
The fun part.
The fun part, I'm looking at the puddle. What am I looking for?
You're looking for recognizable images, and the source lists some common ones. Hearts often relate to emotions or relationships. Animals are a big one. They might represent instincts or spirit guides.
What about letters? I've heard people say they see initials.
Yep, letters or numbers are very common. They often point to names of people involved in the situation or maybe a significant date or time frame.
Okay, but let's go back to the subjective thing, because the guide mentions circles and spikes.
Right, so generally a circle represents completion, wholeness, protection. It's a contained energy. Spikes or jagged edges usually indicate conflict, resistance, or aggressive energy.
But here's the kicker. The guide has this expert rule, which basically says, what does this symbol mean to me? Can we play that out with an example?
Sure, let's take a snake.
Okay. I see a snake in my wax.
Now, if you are someone who grew up in a culture where snakes represent wisdom, transformation, shedding old skin, seeing that snake is a fantastic omen, it means you're growing.
But what if I'm terrified of snakes?
Exactly. If you have a phobia, or if in your personal symbology a snake means a betrayal or a snake in the grass, then that same shape is a warning.
So the wax didn't change, I changed the meaning.
The symbol is neutral. Your subconscious is the filter. You have to ask yourself, what was the first emotion I felt when I saw this? Was it warmth? Was it dread? That initial flinch is the real reading.
That puts a lot of responsibility on the observer. You can't just blame the candle.
You really can't.
Okay, let's move to the second element, because the wax doesn't just sit there. It moves, flow, and direction.
This is the narrative arc. If the shapes are the characters, the flow is the plot. How did the wax move while it was melting?
So let's break down the directions. Say I'm working to get a new job. I want this job desperately. And the wax flows toward me.
That's a good sign. Flowing towards you represents energy coming in. Attraction. Manifestation. It's arriving in your physical space.
Okay. But what if it flows away? Does that mean I'm not getting the job?
Not necessarily. Flowing away represents release, letting go, or sending energy out. So in your job scenario, it might mean you need to let go of your current position first, or maybe you need to send out more applications. It creates distance.
So it's not no, it's go.
Sometimes, yes.
What if it's just lopsided? Like the camel burned, but all the wax pooled on the left side and the right side is totally dry.
That indicates an imbalance. It suggests you're pouring too much energy into one aspect of the problem and neglecting another, or that the energy is leaning in a specific direction.
And the dream scenario. The A+ burn?
Smooth and even. The wax melts uniformly, pools centrally. That suggests clarity, ease, and alignment. No bumps in the road.
Which brings us to element number 3, the residue, the leftovers. I always wonder about this. Is a clean plate good, or do we want a lot of wax to read?
That's a common misconception.
Yeah.
People think more wax equals more messages. But in ceromancy, a clean burn is usually the gold standard.
Really?
If there is very little wax left behind, it indicates minimal resistance. The intention went out, the energy did its job, and there was nothing holding it back. It's efficient.
So if I come back and there's a mountain of wax, a huge thick puddle, that's actually bad.
Bad is a strong word, but it suggests heaviness. Heavy buildup usually suggests obstacles. It can represent emotional weight, or what the guide calls unfinished business. The energy couldn't fully process through the candle, it got stuck.
It feels like baggage.
It is baggage. Material baggage.
Okay, the fourth element, and this one, honestly, this one creeps me out a little. Texture, the tactile part. Yeah, we're talking about what the wax looks like up close. Smooth and glossy is good, right?
Yes. Smooth, glossy wax reflects calm energy, clarity, harmony. It's like a still lake.
But then you have cracked or rough,
which points to turbulence. If the wax dries and it looks like a dry riverbed cracked griddle, that often mirrors internal conflict. The energy wasn't smooth, so the result isn't smooth.
But the one that really got me was stringy or web-like.
Ah,
Can you explain that? Because when I read web-like, I just think of spiders and getting trapped.
and you're not far off. Stringy or web-like formations where the wax creates these little bridges or strands
Yeah.
usually represent entanglements, complexity.
It's messy.
It's messy connections. If you're asking about a relationship and you get web-like wax, it suggests things are complicated. There are strings attached. It's
Yeah.
not a clean break or a clean start. It's the visual representation of it's complicated.
Okay, so we've got shapes, flow, residue, texture. That's a lot to keep in your head, and I feel like if I tried this, I would immediately get paralyzed trying to analyze every single drip.
That is the trap. And the source actually addresses this. It mentions that this practice can be especially powerful for neurodivergent or emotionally sensitive individuals precisely because it isn't rigid. But that freedom can be overwhelming.
So how do we stop ourselves from spiraling?
You use guiding questions. Instead of asking, what does the book say? You ask yourself, what was I feeling when I saw this? Or does this feel like confirmation or a warning? You anchor the reading in your body, not your brain.
But even with intuition, we have to talk about the skepticism. We have to talk about the physics because I can already hear people listening saying, guys, it's wax, it melts because of heat.
And they are absolutely right.
So what are the common mistakes? What are the mundane factors we need to rule out before we start claiming the spirits are talking to us?
The first rule of magic is, rule out the mundane. Physics still exists. If your candle is sitting directly under an air conditioning vent,
Uh-huh.
the wax is going to flow away from the vent.
That's not a spirit guide, that's HVAC.
Exactly. If you have a cheap candle where the wick is off-center, it's going to burn unevenly. That's not a sign of imbalance in your life, that's just a manufacturing defect.
Tunneling.
Tunneling is a huge one. If you don't burn the candle long enough for the melt pool to reach the edges, it tunnels down.
Mm-hmm.
That creates a lot of residue. That's not spiritual resistance, that's just user error.
So you have to be a bit of a scientist first.
You do. You have to treat it like an experiment. Eliminate the variables, level surface, no drafts, a trimmed wick. If you've done all that, and then the wax does something weird, now we're talking.
There's one more pitfall the source warns about, and I think this is deep. Reading from fear.
This is crucial. If you are anxious about an outcome, say you're terrified your partner is cheating on you, you are going to project that fear onto the wax. You will see spikes where there are curves. You will see a web where there is just a drip.
You're looking for the monster, so you find it.
The source explicitly states, messages are meant to guide, not scare. If you look at a reading and you feel a sense of doom, take a breath. That is likely your own anxiety mirroring back at you.
And sometimes a drip is just a drip.
Sometimes nothing stands out, and that's okay. Don't force a narrative where there isn't one.
Okay, so let's say I'm intrigued. I want to try this, but I want to be smart about it. I don't want to just stare at wax and make things up. How do I actually get good at this?
The source highly recommends the wax journal method.
I love a good spreadsheet. What are we tracking?
You treat it like a data set. You record the date, maybe the moon phase if you're into that, the specific intention, the type of candle, and then you sketch or describe what you saw.
Saw a duck, flowed left, texture was smooth.
Right. But here is the most valuable part, retrospective analysis.
Going back later.
Yes. You write down your prediction. I think this means good news. But then a month later, you go back and write down what actually happened.
Oh, that keeps you honest.
It creates a feedback loop. You might realize, hey, every time I see a bird shape, I actually get a text message from my mom.
Yeah.
Or every time I think the spikes are bad, I actually end up having a really productive breakthrough.
You build your own dictionary.
Exactly. It stops being a guessing game and starts being a language. Your language.
It grounds the intuition in reality. It's less about predicting the future and more about training your pattern recognition.
And that's really the takeaway here. Ceromancy requires no initiation. You don't need a degree. You don't need to pay a guru. It just requires intention, observation, and self-trust.
It's a quiet conversation between the subconscious and the moment.
It is.
You know, there's a final thought from the source that I really want to leave people with. It touches on this idea that two people can look at the same pool of wax and see two completely different valid truths.
It's the observer effect, isn't it?
It forces us to ask, if the meaning changes based on who is looking at it, are we just reading the future? Or are we participating in creating it by how we choose to interpret the signs?
If you see the snake as wisdom, maybe you act with wisdom. If you see it as a threat, maybe you act with fear. The wax didn't change the outcome. Your reaction did.
Something to think about the next time you blow out a candle and find yourself staring at the mess. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
See you next time.